Vivek Ramaswamy was on CNN recently in this clip that we're about to watch that demonstrates a semantic technique commonly used by the media, propagandists, advertisers, and cult leaders of various sorts to control your reality. Let's watch.
I think it is legitimate to say how many police, how many federal agents were on the planes that hit the Twin Towers. Maybe the answer is zero. It probably is zero for all I know, right? I have no reason to think it was anything other than zero. But if we're doing a comprehensive assessment of what happened on 9/11, we have a 9/11 commission. Absolutely, there should be an answer the public knows the answer to. Explain to me what you meant there.
This is really, it's funny. I mean, The Atlantic is playing the same game as CNN. It's funny. What I said is on January 6th.
All right, first thing we notice, basic communication observation, her blink rate sped up. And this is not meant to be a criticism of her. Honestly, I think most people in that situation, our blink rate would increase. Anytime there's a confrontational moment, our blink rate tends to increase. But what's actually deeper and more related to the deeper principle I want to get it to is that because he went off script, her brain actually had to burn more calories to keep up, to just basically process this novel situation. Most of our communications involve scripts that we follow where we do something, we say, hey, how you doing? We expect a how you doing back. We don't even think about it, right? There's very little attention. We basically conserve a lot of calories expecting this script to play out in this like two-stroke exchange of how you doing, or in a slightly more complex exchange where she says something, there's maybe a range of answers she expects, but he creates a pattern interrupt, which forces her to actually process more information.
January 6th. I do believe that there were many federal agents in the field, and we deserve to know who they are. On 9/11, what I've said is that the...
Okay, restrained swallow, basically showing some nerves. I'm guessing, obviously I can't read her mind, but I'm guessing already at this point, she's not really listening to what he's saying, and you'll see that with some of her responses. She's thinking, oh shit, I don't really know what to do here. How do I steer us back to common ground? This is not like me thinking she has any malicious intent or even a criticism of media as a whole or her as a person, but she's trying to basically come back to basically mental territory where she feels more comfortable.
The government lied, and this is incontrovertible evidence, Caitlin. The government lied about Saudi Arabia's involvement. There was a Saudi spy named al-Bayoumi who they lied, and the government lied, and the 9/11 Commission lied. We know that because declassified
hard swallow again
in 2021
Which
revealed that
President Biden
al-Bayoumi
declassified.
was indeed.
Okay, so you could look at her comment just there and say, oh, okay, CNN is part of leftist propaganda and they need to prop up Biden. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. I'm not even going to question that in this moment. But what I think what's really going on for her as an individual and this person is that she's trying to bring the conversation back to her familiar reality by referencing a fact, Biden declassified it, to basically counter the fact that he brought up about the Saudi Arabian agent, just so that she feels like she's on some sort of factual footing too, because as you'll see as this conversation progresses, it proves that she was leaning on very abstract ideas.
What's that?
Yeah, the report that President Biden declassified.
Yes.
But your quote here, are you telling me that the quote is wrong
20 years later,
here?
yeah.
But are you telling me that
I'm
your
telling
quote
you
is
the quote's
wrong here
wrong,
because
actually.
it says how many
I am
federal
actually.
agents were on the planes
I actually
at
asked,
the Twin Towers?
Yeah, when I actually, and this is just lifting the curtain on how media works again, I asked that reporter to send the recording because it was on the record. He refused to do it. But we had a free-flowing conversation. The truth is there are lies the government has told about 9/11, but it's not the ones that somebody put in my mouth. It's the one that I articulated, which is that Saudi Arabia, absolutely, their intelligence was involved in 9/11. And that's a difficult thing you're not supposed to say. The facts back that up. Separately, as it relates to January 6th, same story all over again. There were federal agents in the field. I think they've lied about how many there were. And we, the people, deserve the truth, despite the layers of distortion that exist in the media to prevent us from getting it.
You're saying that you were misquoted here. So we will take you at your word.
Yes.
You're saying that you were misquoted here. But you were asked another.
Okay, right there, mini exchange is that he was bringing up things that can be refutable, right? He brought up some concrete statements. It's not even to say that everything he said is factual, but he was bringing up concrete statements that can be proven or disproven. Whereas as you'll see what she's doing, she's going to say some things that are vague enough that they can't be pushed against.
Another time recently about whether or not 9/11 was an inside job. This is what your response was.
Okay, this phrase, 9/11 was an inside job. This is a phrase we've heard in the media. If you follow politics at all, you've heard this phrase either, from a conspiracy theorist lens or from the more conventional media lens. This question represents a binary on-off switch that allows people to label and sort a certain person in a way that I'm going to explain a little more, but let's keep watching.
9/11 inside job or exactly how the government tells us?
Okay, so what he just did here in this clip is basically a choice close that any salesman would use, right? Would you like the black car or would you like the red car, right? Either way, you're buying a car. Either way, you're doing something that is good for the salesman. So I don't know the context of this bit, and I'm not accusing him of having any sort of insidious purpose, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that his question was coming from the way most people think about the world, which is you're putting things in buckets, right? You're sorting experiences, you're sorting people, you're sorting events into buckets that you can assume, basically make assumptions about the rest of it. So this question, was 9/11 an inside job? Just as a binary yes/no statement, right? Not even going into his two options. It allows someone who follows the conventional narrative, the cultural narrative, to basically choose two buckets, right? If he says yes, he's a conspiracy theorist. You slap that label on him, and that means all these other associations. He probably believes in a flat earth. He doesn't believe in science, all these other associations, which leads to the action of, oh, I'm just going to dismiss him, right? If he says yes to this question, it sends you down this linear branch of the decision tree where you know what your mind has to do, which is very little. You just cut them out. If they say no, then you can categorize them in some version of the good guy bucket, where now this might seem like a positive thing. And yes, you'll keep paying attention to this person who now, said the right answer, so to speak. But there are also a bunch of various other assumptions you're going to make about this person that fit, oh, I'm in the good guy bucket, which is why when certain politicians basically stray from what you expect, maybe they don't vote left on everything or vote right on everything, it causes some confusion. Not only does it upset the parties themselves who want we want a level of homogeneity, but it also sometimes confuses the voters because most voters don't want to have to think, okay, they believe this on this and this on this. It actually, they have to spend a lot more energy. They have to burn a lot more calories literally with their brain to process this event rather than just labeling and sorting.
I don't believe the government has told us the truth. Again, I'm driven by evidence and data. What I've seen in the last several years is we have to be skeptical of what the government does tell us. I haven't seen evidence to the contrary, but do I believe everything the government told us about it? Absolutely not.
That's two questions.
The 9/11 Commission? Absolutely not.
I mean, Vic, I think people look at those comments. They look at what you said in the Atlantic, which you say you were misquoted. They look at comments that you've made about the Federal Reserve adding zeros to media companies' bank accounts. And I mean, it looks like you're floating conspiracy theories with this defense of I'm just asking questions.
Okay, so she's actually describing the perceptions of most people very well, right? They look at, they being most people processing the world through these binary or maybe, 3-option multiple choice questions, 4-option, where there's only so many buckets. And you have to fit one of the buckets. And based on what bucket it is how you're going to be categorized and treated. Whereas he was trying to basically not even sidestep, but bring things out of the abstract label. It's like outside of the sorting mechanism of the common person and just focus on a concrete fact. Obviously, he has his own opinions. Like he said, he's made his own abstract statement in the last bit of, people should question what the government is. Obviously, that's his opinion. But he is basically breaking the game or breaking the script of these journalists.
Well, when you actually quote me, those are my words, and I stand by them. So somebody else quoting me, putting words in my mouth, I have a problem with. But those words I stand by. You want to know why? Because we literally know the FBI, the 9/11 Commission, the U.S. government on down told us specifically that Saudi Arabia had no involvement. 20-plus years later, quietly declassifying documents showing that not only did Saudi Arabia have involvement, it was a Saudi intelligence agent that received 2 of those terrorists that crashed planes.
Blink rate increases again.
But the question was, is 9/11 an inside job? And you didn't.
Right, okay. So he's speaking on the level, again, of concrete facts. The concrete facts don't fit her abstraction. She's blinking a lot because she is, and obviously there's pressures being on camera. Again, I think most of us would have a similar reaction to her position. But she's now switching back to the abstract, right? The more abstract the conversation stays, the less you have to, basically the more fuzzy the reality is, the less you have to look at these specific details that may or may not fit in the bucket. So the best thing she can do just to feel sane in this moment is to go back to this very abstract question. This binary question was 9/11 an inside job.
And you didn't say no.
Caitlin,
that's what I think people are looking.
You didn't say no, right? You didn't pick one of the two approved options. Approved in the sense of it'll make it easy on our sorting mechanisms.
Caitlin, you know what's really funny? You literally just played that, and you could play it for your audience again. He said, or do you believe everything the government has told us? And my answer was, I do not believe everything the government has told us.
So he's referencing the concrete.
But you see because they lied.
The point is
and
that
I know
it leaves
this game
the door
comes up,
open.
Caitlin, every time there's an outsider who comes.
Okay. The leaves the door open. Translation is now we have to think really hard. Now we have to treat this as a novel experience, which most experiences are novel. Again, abstracting is not wrong, right? There's a reason why we evolved to abstract things. If you see a bear in the forest, you don't need to know what the sentiment or the behavior of every individual bear is in the world. You don't need to treat the bears as individuals. Bear, if you know nothing else about bears other than they're potentially dangerous, you might as well treat them as dangerous and think nothing more than, okay, bear, I better run. If you're a little bit more sophisticated with bears, maybe you know that there are very dangerous grizzlies for which you should stay away. There are less dangerous black bears and you could treat them differently. But there is a reason for abstraction, right? You need a level of sophistication to have, that level of categorization. Whereas for most people, bear, run away is good enough. Same thing with this question, right? Is not a criticism of people. Is not even saying people are dumb. Most people do this. Most intelligent people do this because they don't have to process every single experience as new. So essentially what we do is we choose a certain media outlet that we've predetermined is our authority, and we're just going to take in what they say because it's just too much work. It actually literally takes too many calories to process every bit of information, and most people don't have time for that.
Door open, Vivek. It leaves the door open, and someone who's a 9/11 truther looks at that and says, "That's exactly what I believe."
9/11 truther being another label.
That's exactly what I believe. You think the government's lying about 9/11?
I think the government has systematically and for a very long time lied about 9/11. And I think I'm the only presidential candidate who's told us the truth. Saudi Arabia's involvement. It is absolutely true.
But you don't think that 9/11 was an inside job, correct?
Right. Keeps going back to this question. He, regardless of your opinions of who he is handling this in a very semantically sane way. Even if you think his facts are wrong, and I don't know, even if you think his platform is wrong, he is bringing the conversation back to a concrete level where he's bringing up things that, since they're so concrete, they can be disproven, right? Someone can disprove him and then basically poke holes in everything he's saying. But what she's saying is back to this, was 9/11 an inside job? Whether you say yes or no doesn't mean anything, because even the term inside job can mean a million different things, especially to different people.
Of course not. And I've never said it. But the media filters do create a lot of falsehoods.
It's not a media filter. You have to stop blaming the media.
A pretty simple answer, again, making us not have to think very hard.
The media, where I'm asking you about comments that you have made.
And I'm telling you that the comments I made, the ones you just played, are indeed what I believe, which was not that 9/11 was an inside job, but that Saudi Arabia absolutely was involved, and our government for 20 years lied to the American people about it.
There was an entire 9/11 Commission report on this.
Yes, and it lied, and it was false. And in fact, you know where that's coming out, Caitlin? There's now a federal case in the Southern District of New York, where the government of Saudi Arabia is being sued by victims of families. That's why this is resurfacing itself. It is relevant, and it turns out
there's a difference in asking questions about Saudi Arabia's involvement and the government's involvement, and then pushing this idea that what your comment about who was on the plane and then was 9/11 an inside job, where you did not say no earlier. That's why it's important to clarify those comments, because otherwise it feels like you're towing the line when it comes to conspiracy theories.
Caitlin, I am guilty as charged that I do not follow.
Okay. Basic enough, I think the point has been made, is that she needed the no, right? She needed a no or she needed a yes, because that makes it easier. The semantic principle here is labeling and sorting. And to be clear, I'll reiterate, we all do this all the time. We label things, we put them in a box so that we can kind of assume what we need to know about them, how we're going to interact with them, and then we could go on to other things. And the thing is, as important as this is as a human brain mechanism in most of our lives, it gets so easily twisted by the media. They basically can hook in, and media, advertisers, leaders of various sorts, they can hook into certain terminology. They can give us a term. They can sometimes create a term for us to use. give us all the associations, and it allows us to basically put the world in the box or not in the box and act accordingly, rather than treating every individual situation, person, event, and opinion, stance, if you will, as an individual novel thing. And basically, even though, as most people, maybe you don't have time to assess every single bit of information, it'd be hard to live that way. It's more important to recognize that when you allow this to happen, or when you're blind to this and you just follow along with the media's abstract labels, you are letting your reality be guided without making conscious decisions.